Thank you.
You may be seated. Thank you. Do you understand that you are still on roll?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. You may proceed with your cross-examination.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
So, how long did you want to be a map maker?
I was pre-vet and I toured a veterinary school and they made you operate on healthy pound animals to get experience, and I couldn't do it, and so I did my backup plan, which was biogeography.
That's awesome. It looks like you enjoy your work. Is that fair to say?
I do.
And it's kind of, seems to me like a combination of science and art.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Great. Now, I just have a few questions for you.
Sure.
It seemed on one of the maps, if I understood you correctly, because it didn't have the scale bar, was there a margin of error of plus or minus 50 yards? Is that what I heard?
I estimated 50 to 100 yards from the bridge to along the stream to where the yellow area was indicating.
50 yards distance or 50 yards margin of error?
Distance.
And what would you estimate the margin of error on that would be?
Your object and ask that the witness be directed to a specific exhibit if he is going to give.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Which exhibit were you referring to?
2.
Number 2. Can I see exhibit 2, please? Can I approach the witness?
You may do so.
Thanks.
Okay, now. So, what would you estimate your margin of error and your estimate to be?
I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I mean, because I can measure this to within an inch on my computer, so it's an estimate. If you give me a minute, I'll try to give you as exact as I can based on this, but...
And you can rely on more of your artistic side. I understand it's difficult.
Plus or minus 25.
Objection, Your Honor, to the form of the question on which side of Mr. Gehring.
The objection is sustained.
You could just then estimate from it, please.
Based on the sizes of the trees, I'm going to say that it's in my ballpark of 50 to 100. I'm not exactly sure, but that's about right. I don't know.
So about a 50-yard margin of error then.
Okay, sure.
And when I heard you talk about the last exhibit you were viewing, under Ms. Jones' presentation, it sounded like, in what exhibit was that?
I want to say it was 19, but I'm not sure. Could have been 20. It was the largest scale one.
That's the one?
Yeah.
Now you said that was not produced by you, though.
Correct.
And I apologize, I'm sure I just misheard. I thought earlier that they're all produced by you.
I'm sorry, what number are we on?
19.
Yeah, it's Exhibit 19. My boss produced this on a day I was out sick.
Okay.
He started working on it before he gave it to me. The rest of the maps were subsequent to this map,
Okay.
and I produced those.
Okay. So, just to be clear, that map you did not produce.
Correct.
Okay.
The data on the map I have checked, and it is accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you say data, the points.
Correct. Yeah.
And
the points.
you checked it from a desk?
Correct. I did not drive to them. I compared the points to the TMK parcels that Real Property produces. That data is linked to their database with addressing, ownership, et cetera, as well as I double-checked via web sources as well, Google, etc.
Okay. And I understand that's probably something that's common in your field to use those sources.
Move to strike to what council understands is regular in regards to this
The
witness's
objection
work.
is sustained. You may rephrase the question.
Using those type of sources, that's something that people in your field tend to rely on?
We do, especially for the Google Street View data. I didn't use that in this instance, but that's a good example of where there's a large database of imagery that's collected at an angle that's not available from an airplane. So unless the county was willing to drive around and take all of those photographs like Google has done for free, there's no reason to do it. So we do.
Okay. And is going in the field also something somebody in your profession does to check on these things?
We do.
But that was not done here, correct?
Correct.
And the maps
By
were...
me.
I
Yeah.
understand. The maps that you've been viewing, those were all made at the request of the prosecutor's office?
They were.
Okay, and all the points that were on them, they were also put there at the request of the prosecutor's office?
They were.
What other maps that you talked about today would have margins of error?
Objection, B.
The objection is overruled. You may answer the question.
Okay. I was thinking about this yesterday when I left because, like, I'm kind of a shy person. It's hard for me to explain things off the top of my head unless I'm sitting around with my buddies drinking beer and stuff. So bear with me on this. But one thing that's hard for, I think, people that aren't in science or technical fields to understand is that everything has a margin of error. I used to process my internship from graduate school, process water quality testing information, and we had our own water system like Maui does, and we would test for lead. And the public wants to know, well, is there lead in my water? Well, the answer almost invariably is yes. It's a matter of how much. And so what is dangerous, how much will hurt my child is the question, not is there lead. Because even if the test says no, the test has a testing resolution, so it might be 1 part per billion. So if there's less than that, the test is going to come back absolutely negative. But that doesn't mean there's no lead in it. It just means the test wasn't accurate enough to discern that. And so with this data, is there error in the data? Yes. For instance, in Exhibit 19, the satellite imagery, this is produced by a company that guarantees that for each of those pixels on that image, if I found a sewer lid and put a dot down on the center, there's a 95% confidence interval that that point will be 4 meters of air or less. So there's a 5% chance it could be more. All of this data has error. When we go out and collect GPS data, I get a confidence interval on that back too. Now our unit's really accurate. It's going to be within 95% of a foot, right? So that's how we double check things. But even if I sent the survey crew and they put an antenna with their $50,000, $60,000 GPS unit set up on the sewer lid for a week, we averaged that hundreds of thousands of points together and came up with something that was probably under half a centimeter off of its actual point. Within a year, it's going to be off by almost 2 centimeters because the island's moving that direction at almost 2 centimeters a year. So everything has error. Yeah, that's a long-winded answer. So
I appreciate that, actually. That's
okay.
In mapping, do you know whether the databases you rely on are the same databases that are used to determine cell towers?
I don't understand. Well, I can tell you what I know about cell towers. The companies that run them, they
No, I
have
was
them
just
surveyed.
wondering, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
No,
to
go
interrupt
ahead.
you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was wondering that the FBI uses databases in determining...
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
I think these are
The
common.
objection is sustained. You may rephrase the question.
Who's got access to these databases?
Objection that is beyond the ability of this witness to testify.
If you know. Do you know who has access to these databases that you use?
Your Honor, same objection.
The previous question was withdrawn, and the objection to the most recent question is overruled. You may answer the question.
Okay. It depends on the data set. So, for instance, in Exhibit 19, that satellite imagery is purchased by the USDA, for instance. They purchase a very liberal license, so even the general public can access it. Other data, such as utility data, is held very close to the chest. Some of it, even I don't have access to, like the zoning data. So like the planning department, they don't release that. Same with like the TMK parcels, like I discussed yesterday. There's daily changes as people buy and sell properties, but only the people in that department have access to it. I could probably ask for it, but the certified once a year data is what's released, and again, that's publicly available. So you'd have to ask me about a specific data set for me to tell you whether or not I know.
Let me even see if we can reverse it. Do you know what database the FBI uses in formulating maps?
I do not.
I don't have any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any redirect examination?
Yes, briefly. Can you see the
Yep.
display of two
Yep.
in evidence? Okay. Is this the same two that you were answering Mr. Nardi's question about that 50 to 100 yard range?
It is.
Your Honor,
The objection, it's preliminary. The objection is overruled.
Is that the same two that you were discussing with Mr. Nardi?
It is.
Okay. And when he was asking you about that 50-yard margin of error, is there really a 50-yard margin of error in this photograph?
Objection.
The objection is sustained. You may rephrase the question.
Okay. Where in this photograph is there a 50-yard, if there is, a 50-yard margin of error?
Objection, Your Honor, assumes facts not in evidence.
The objection is overruled. You may answer the question.
The 50-yard margin of error was in my estimating the distance from the bridge on Hina Highway crossing New Ilua Stream to the point indicated by the bottom of the yellow arrow. The imagery is accurate to, in terms of its XY location, under a meter. The error is within my taking a stab if I had to guess what that distance is. It's not the data, it's the operator, in terms of just me guessing.
Okay. So when you're saying guesstimate or operator error, what are you basing that information in which you're giving a distance range on?
It's looking at the trees, the width of the road. So when you asked me to describe the image, and you asked me about that location, I was making a guess about how far down the stream from the bridge I thought it was.
Okay, and without guessing, will you give the jurors a distance range estimate?
Yeah, it's been asked and answered.
The objection is overruled.
Will you give them a distance range estimate that you're talking about, that 50-yard margin of error being in?
Well, I estimated it was 50 to 100 yards
Okay.
from the bridge to where the arrow points. But if I wanted to know conclusively, I could measure it to within a foot or less on my computer.
You can do that.
I can do that.
So when we talk about the point of the yellow arrow, what's the margin of error on where that's pointing? Is there one?
The arrow is placed with respect to the imagery, so the arrow would be whatever the XY arrow of the imagery would be, which again is underneath a meter. For most of the locations that I field check the accuracy of that particular data set, it was well under that, and probably, well, not probably, for the areas I checked it was under a foot. That said, I did not check it in that area, but I would expect it to be consistent with the remainder of the data set.
And what do you base that opinion on?
The consistency of the air across the places we did check using GPS.
Right. You agreed when Mr. Nardi asked you that mapping is a combination of art and science.
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
The objection is overruled. You may answer the question.
I did.
Can you explain what you mean by mapping being a combination of both art and science?
The science portion is in the construction of the databases, the management of the data. It's a technical field depending on what data you're depicting digitally. The artistic portion is not in terms of the accuracy of the data, it's in terms of displaying it in an aesthetically pleasing manner. For the map itself, it has no bearing upon the accuracy of the data or the map itself.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Nardi, any recross examination?
Just one. Are these maps that you've been looking at any more accurate than a map we would buy at the store?
Can you give me an example?
You know how you go to the grocery store, they have like a map of Maui?
Yep.
Are they the same accuracy as these maps we've been going over?
These maps, I've never
Exhibit-
produced one of those maps, so do you want me to speculate?
I do.
Objection, I'll ask the objection, speculation. The witness said he cannot answer without doing that.
The objection is sustained.
You've looked at those maps, correct?
I have.
Do they seem similarly accurate to you as the maps that were produced for this case? Let me strike that question. Do you have any reason to doubt the accuracy of those maps?
Objection being which maps?
Maps at the store.
The objection is sustained. You may
The maps we would buy at a common grocery store, like a map of Maui. Do you have any reason to believe those maps are not as accurate as these maps?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has testified he doesn't know what those maps are.
The objection is sustained.
Do you have any reason to believe the maps you have seen in a grocery store available to purchase are any less accurate than the maps we've been going over today?
In general, yes. Tourist maps, which I think is what you're referring to, are generally produced using data which is exported from a GIS, then imported into a graphics program such as Adobe Illustrator, and then annotated and kind of decorated with like dolphins and stuff like that. So accuracy would be of a lesser magnitude than maps which are produced start to finish in a GIS using professionally prepared imagery and other data.
I actually meant something a little different. Let me clarify. I had a question. I remember the old days when we used to drive around with atlases. Did you ever use an atlas?
Yeah.
Now, the maps in those atlases, road maps, do you believe that the maps in exhibits 2 through 19 are any more accurate than the maps contained in a road atlas?
I would have to,
Objection, lack of foundation that this witness knows what he's comparing to his maps.
The objection is sustained.
You're familiar with road atlases?
I prefer that you gave me an example so I could compare it, but yes, I am.
Which one are you familiar with?
Like well, on the mainland there's books of the entire lower 48 states, sometimes including Hawaii. And so those are, although it covers a large area, it's called a small scale map. Are you asking me about the accuracy of like the line work for the roads or the distance between objects?
The general accuracy of those maps.
I don't know.
Would you trust them?
Objection, relevance, and vague.
The objection is sustained.
And what did you just call them, small scale maps?
Yeah.
Do you know how those are produced?
Objection, this
Don't.
exceeds the scope of the redirect at this point.
The objection is sustained.
No further questions, thank you.
Are there any juror questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You are
Thank you.
excused. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state will be calling Detective Wendell.
I'm sorry, may we approach him? We'll have you, please.
May we approach him?
You may.
This freshman
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed with your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Luke, could you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen here in the jury?
My name is Wendell Luke. I'm a sergeant with the Maui Police Department.
Now, Sergeant, how long have you been with Maui Police Department?
28 years, sir.
All those 28 years, which area of the department did you spend the most time?
The Criminal Investigation Division, sir.
And the Criminal Investigation Division, what type of officers is that division made up of?
All sergeants,
Are they detectives?
detectives.
And how long were you in the Criminal Investigation Division?
About 13 years.
And right now, for current, are you still in the Criminal Investigation Division?
No, sir.
Where are you assigned to this?
I'm currently assigned to Kihei Patrol.
Before you, I guess, for the word I'll use, before you were promoted into the Criminal Investigation Division, where did you serve?
I served as a community police officer, traffic section, patrols section.
And within the Criminal Investigation Division, are there different areas or divisions within that division?
Yes, sir.
Could you please explain what those areas are?
Criminal Investigation Division is broken up into 3 different sections. You have the property detectives who handle burglaries, thefts. Then you have the white collar guys who handle all the fraudulent use of credit cards, identity theft, computer crimes. Then you have the sex assault units, the detectives that handle all sex assault investigations, and then you have the persons crime detectives who handle assaults, homicides, missing persons, that kind of thing.
And while you're in the Criminal Investigation Division, which side or sides were you assigned to?
I was assigned primarily to the white collar, sir.
And how many years did you spend in the white collar or the property side?
The property side about 9.5 years.
And how much time, or yeah, how much time did you spend with the, besides white collar crimes, you said you were the person's crimes?
I was assigned to the person's crimes.
And how long were you assigned to the person's crimes?
About 6 months.
Were you ever assigned to the sexual assault unit?
No, sir.
Now, while you were in the white collar or the property crimes division for approximately 9.5 years, did you also handle crimes against persons or persons crimes?
Yes, sir.
And how is that you handled those kind of crimes while you were assigned to the property crime division?
When I was assigned to night shift, basically your duties and responsibilities as a night detective would handle all the in-custody cases. So as long as it wasn't a sex assault case, if it was a person's crime, we would handle that.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the missing persons investigations would go to the persons crimes, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
While you were assigned to the property crimes area, were you ever assigned to handle missing persons cases?
If it came in while I was working night shift.
Okay. So only through the night shift is when you would handle all the crimes with the exception of sexual assault?
Yes, sir.
Now, you said earlier also that you were in patrol, traffic, and community relations, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Prior to being promoted into the Criminal Investigation Division?
Yes, sir. As a patrol officer, and then I got promoted to sergeant, then I went to Molokai, and then I came back to patrol.
Now, are all, for some housekeeping matters, are all detectives also sergeants in the Criminal Investigation Division?
All the detectives are sergeants except for the domestic violence unit. The domestic violence unit, they have 1 sergeant and then what we call police officer 3s that help handle case manage all the domestic violence.
Okay. And obviously the domestic violence unit is on the or within the person's crimes division, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the procedures are or what the protocol is for missing persons investigations beginning with patrol and going through the criminal investigation division?
Yes, sir.
And we have 2 minutes left. Okay, what is that procedure?
The patrol function is they're the primary investigators. They first, when the call comes in, they handle the case first. They document the case. They make their checks to see if there's, if the person was last seen, what they're last wearing, any health issues, any mental issues, any drug use, any areas that they might hang around with, who they might hang around with, that kind of thing. They make their checks to make sure the person is not in custody with us, not in custody at MCCC, or is a patient at the hospital.
Okay. When you said they're the primary, are they the preliminary office investigators or are they the primary?
Well, they're the primary as far as taking the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do they actually, is the protocol that they actually submit a report on that?
Objection meeting?
Yeah, this is a preliminary
The
question.
the objection is sustained, excuse me.
Okay. What is the protocol with respect to their duties after they do this investigation, if you know?
They prepare a report, and then if all their checks reveal that they cannot find or locate this missing persons, then they'll notify the CID lieutenant of persons.
Okay. And when it gets to the CID lieutenant, and the CID, does it stand for Criminal Investigation Division?
Yes, sir.
So when it gets to the CID lieutenant, what happens at that point?
At that point, the CID lieutenant will assign a persons detective to handle the case.
Your Honor, just before we go to anything further. Yes.
All right, we will take our lunch recess at this time and reconvene at 1:30. Please keep in mind the cautionary instructions.